Delinquent auto loans are very, very serious. And I kind of think of them as mini bankruptcies, really. If you've watched my channel, you'd know that I've helped thousands buy and lease cars, and more often than not, customers tell me about their repossessions. And somehow they bounce back, and they bounce back very, very quickly. A lot of the stuff I'll be discussing is anecdotal, since I've come across hundreds of different scenarios involving combinations of this topic, and none of this should be taken as legal advice. Got it? And lately they've been repossessing cars way quicker than they were ever doing before. I pulled this from Consumer Affairs. In Alaska, Arizona, California, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, and Minnesota, the law is explicitly defined. Lenders in these states can begin the repossession process immediately after your first missed payment. I'll put a link for that in the description below. So say you can't make the payments anymore. What should you do? What I would do, I wouldn't wait until they come and get the car. I would call them and start to make arrangements. Even if they are going to repossess the car, at the very minimum, knowing when they're going to come and get it is a lot better than just having them show up at your front door with the tow truck. I'd get on the phone with them and find out if the situation can be resolved without them coming to get the car. It may actually help you lower the costs of doing this whole thing by letting them know where the car is and if you can possibly even drop it off at one of their dealerships instead. Now, how do they usually calculate repossession costs and what your credit is usually hit for? Pay attention. This is the part with the math. Typically, after they get your car, they're going to keep track of every single dollar that it costs them to come and pick it up. Then they'll take the car to auction where they're going to put it up for sale, and the following is going to happen. They'll sell the car, and usually lenders do, in fact, try to get the most that they can at auction. So don't think that they're just going to take whatever they can for it at auction. It usually doesn't work like that, and a minimum or a reserve is typically set on what they'll take. Then, once it's sold, they'll take what your total balance owed was, or in a case of a lease, your remaining obligation, so your remaining payments, plus the disposition fee and any other outstanding charges like local property tax or parking violations. Then they'll subtract the cost of towing and storage, then subtract what they got for the car. So say you have $50,000 left on your car loan as the 10-day total payoff amount. They bill, say, like $450 for towing and recovery, so that basically they pick up the car, they bring it to either the auction or an intermediary who's going to end up taking it to auction. Then say they recover about $38,000 at the auction where it's sold at. They subtract the $38,000 from the balance of $50,450. So now you owe $12,450. You have the choice. You can either pay the $12,000 or make some arrangements to pay. You can leave it as a delinquent balance, which every single month it's going to continue to ruin your credit until it finally either gets paid or it finally gets charged off. You don't want this to happen. This is gonna make getting another car loan a nightmare in the future. In the case of a lease, this is not how it typically works. Say if you only had 5 payments left and shit happens and they repossessed your car after auction, even if they had a negative balance of $12,000 between the car's value and the payoff price set on your lease, they can only charge you for the remaining payments plus the disposition fee and any other outstanding balance you got billed for, miscellaneous, local charges, parking fines, whatever. They can't charge you more than that per your lease. In the best case scenario though, if it were me, I would call the lender and try to make arrangements so that at the very least they don't come to take the car and you don't do a repossession at all, but you make some sort of arrangement to make the payments, but maybe on a delayed schedule, or see if they have some sort of program for somebody in your situation. Sometimes, in the case of a voluntary repo, they'll send someone out pre-repossession to try and give you an estimate of what all of this is going to cost you before they do the repo. BMW offered one of my customers the possibility of sending someone to appraise the car and then send them an estimate as to what the whole thing would end up getting billed for so he could make up his mind on what he wanted to do. This is different than what's called a right to cure, in which lenders will give you some time to catch up on your payments prior or after a repossession. So how does this affect your credit when it all happens? I mean, I've seen scores drop between like 150 and 200 points immediately following the repossession, and even afterwards, even after a decent amount of time passes, say 50 points. But the problem isn't just the score dropping. In this particular case, FICO isn't really factoring in the score as much as it is an item like this exists on the report in general, and it's going to reflect that into their score when they tell the dealership what your FICO auto score is. Again, anecdotal. I have friends who, after voluntarily turning in their cars and dealing with that repossession, they bounce back in as quickly as 2 years with the help of a co-signer, and then immediately following that lease, they were able to get financed on their own. The only problem is, more than likely, after something like this happens, if you try to get another car immediately following the repo, you'll definitely not get approved regardless of your co-signer or increase in your credit score until that debt is paid off or charged off. And in most cases, 7 years have to have passed if you didn't actually take care or wipe out that balance to eliminate it from your report. I made this video here that I think will help you if you're trying to get out of a lease. If you found this information useful, please consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.